Alright, in this video we're going to talk about some basic fraction exponent stuff and then try to work on some more complicated examples as well. So for example, if you have 9 to the 1/2 power, this means the square root of 9, right? Or you can think of it this way, whereas 9 to the 1/2, right, times 9 to the 1/2 equals 9 to the first, where we add those two exponents to get 1. So here the half power means square root, so if you see 9 to the 1/2, that would just equal 3. If you see 8 to the 1/3, what does this mean? Well, this means the third root of 8, and that's a number times itself that equals, times itself 3 times, that equals 8, which in this case is 2, because 2 to the third power equals 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times itself 3 times equals 8. So the third root of 8, right, is 2. And then 16 to the 1/4 power, you can imagine what that might mean. That means the fourth root of 16, which again is 2, but this time it's because 2 to the 4th power, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. A number times itself 4 times, it equals 16. And using that knowledge, they can give you problems that are slightly more difficult. What if we had 8, right, but instead of to the 1/3, it was to the 2/3 power? What does this mean? Well, here you might want to just break up 2/3 and think, oh, that means 8 to the 2 times 1/3 power, right? Because 2 times a third is 2/3. Those are the same thing. And what this does effectively is allows me to think of this as the third root of 8, and that number then squared, or you can think of it as 8 squared, right? Find that, and then take the third root of 8 squared. So in other words, you either apply the squared first and then find the third root, or find the third root and then the square. So the third root of 8 squared, well, the third root of 8 is 2, we just said that, and then 2 squared, what's that? Well, that's 4. Or the other way around, 8 squared is 64, and what's the third root of 64? Well, what number times itself 3 times is 64? Well, that's just going to be 4, and that's your answer. The only other trick they can throw in for you is to somehow put, let's say it was 8, right, to the negative 2/3 power, right? Now this right here, you could think of this as 8 to the negative 1 times 2/3, or times 2 times a third power. So we've broken up this exponent in this way, and this just means I can apply these different parts of the power in any order, because multiplication is still commutative even when it pertains to us breaking up an exponent. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to start with a third. So I'm going to find the third root of 8, right? And then what am I going to do? Well, then I'm going to square it, right? And then what am I going to do? Then I'm going to find the negative first power of that. And you don't have to write it in this way. You could write it as 8 to the 1/3, and then just put squared and negative first, like this. Whatever format helps you, right? So here the third root of 8 is 2, and we still have 2 squared, right, times negative 1. So I'll write negative 1 the same size as 2, so we don't get confused. And then 2 squared is 4, and 4 to the negative 1 power is 1 over 4, right? It means 1 divided by 4. So you can apply that exponent in any sequence. And sometimes, you know, you get a combination where it's, let's say, a fraction, like 2/3, and we'll raise that. No, we'll do a different one, I'm sorry. Well, let's do, I don't know, 4, right, ninths, and then let's raise that to the 1/3 power. Oops, 1/2 power, excuse me. And then let's raise 4/9 to the negative 1/2 power to compare these two. And then talk about a quick strategy to work through these. So the 4/9 to the 1/2 power, you take the square root of the numerator, that's 4, so 4 to the 1/2, and then you would take the square root of the denominator. So it's 9 to the 1/2, and that gives you what? Well, 4 to the 1/2, the square root of 4, that's 2. Right, because 2 times 2 is 4. And then the half root of 9, or the square root of 9, is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. And you're done. So you can do that, or you can do it this way right here. So 4 over 9 to the negative 1/2 power, Well, we can think of that as 4 over 9 to the 1/2 power, right, times negative 1. So split up negative 1/2 and just rewrite it as negative 1, 1/2 times negative 1. So now I apply the half power first. I get 2 over 3 like before, and then I take that to the negative power. In other words, that means I take 1 and divide it by 2/3, or just I think of it as flipping the fraction, right? So it's 3 over 2. So a quick strategy that might work when you have these negative fraction exponents is to simply apply the exponent, in this case 1/2, as if it were positive, and then flip your fraction to get a result. Or if your mind likes it better, you could have flipped the numerator and denominator first. That would get rid of the negative part of the exponent, or apply that part, and then take the square root. One of those two strategies should help you through these problems. All right, thanks.